Hi, I'm Robert Orm, and I'll be reading you today's edition of the Fall River Herald, dated Monday, December 8th, 2025. Corrective Action Okayed for Landfill by Emily Sherney. The landfill in Swansea has laid low for decades since 1981, resting on 22 acres of private property at the end of the public yet undeveloped Sears Road. But residents and an abutter who attended the November 10th Conservation Commission meeting clung to environmental concerns related to disturbing the landfill's idle remains by capping it. After a 40-minute hearing that heard many a hypothetical what-if from the public, members of the board approved capping the landfill by a majority, with one vote in opposition to the project. An order of conditions issued November 25th outlined requirements the project must meet while work is being completed in conjunction with routine monitoring and indicates the official approval of a wetlands permit. In 1983, only 10 acres had been capped with fly ash, leaving the remainder of the site untouched. It is now overgrown with trees and vegetation. A record of the proposed landfill capping was initially filed on March 31, 2025. At the April 14th meeting of the Conservation Commission, Charter Contracting Company, an environmental remediation firm, held a public hearing following a presentation on its three-phase plans to complete corrective actions required to cap the landfill in accordance with Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection, Solid Waste Management Regulations, and Swansea Wetlands Protection Bylaws. Paul LaFlame and his wife Michelle, who own the property that contains the landfill, hired Portsmouth, New Hampshire-based solid waste consulting firm Langdon Environmental LLC to represent them in corresponding with nationwide environmental engineering firm Verdantas, a third-party peer review consultant hired by the town since May 2025. After implementing feedback from Verdantas in September, Charter's revised design plans include a 42-inch pipe to keep drainage flowing through a 30-inch culvert that discharges east of Interstate 195. But this is an acute problem, some at the meeting said, as more weight is spilled onto the pre-existing dump by virtue of capping it off on top. They worry that contaminated discharge would be compressed, seeping into nearby wetlands with the Coles River catching runoff. Jim Pelletier, who serves as a water commissioner in town, flagged these concerns at the same time he posed questions into the height of what he called Mount Trashmore, which he alleged will require 500,000 tons of solid waste capping materials. Bruce Haskell of Langdon Environmental said stormwater design has been adjusted to avoid impacts to surrounding land. The project must comply with local, state, and federal bylaws. Haskell and Alastair Cunningham, a representative of Charter, who were present at the meeting along with Swansea's conservation agent Adeline Bellisham, agreed that capping the landfill would be given more oversight than any project ever worked on under the purview of the Conservation Commission. There are limits of the Conservation Commission's regulatory powers, said Nancy Headcorth, chair of the board. We've done our due diligence here, she said. What happens if this does impact lands around it? Asked Dave Fernandez, the lone abutter who spoke at the meeting and who owns 32 acres of newly acquired land to the east of the LaFlame property. Haskell said capping materials that will be trucked to Swansea are the same that have capped 40 to 50 landfills throughout the Commonwealth. There is going to be some recourse about the whole event, Fernandez said. without elaborating further. In an August 21st memo sent from Verdantas to town administrators detailing its responses to Langdon's August 6th comments in defense of Charter's project design, scale, and process, Verdantas said its review gave particular attention to the protection of abutting properties. A nearby vernal pool, Verdantas said, should be monitored for erosion given the loose perimeter of the landfill, perforated by wetlands. Additionally, access to stormwater basins is critical, and standard practice for landfill closure, design, and maintenance, Verdantas said. A contingency plan for access to drainage basins in an emergency ought to be prepared. The current plan, wrote Verdantas, does not include routine monitoring or sampling of off-site discharge during the construction and grading period. It added that fill materials introduced to the site during the process may contain contaminants that would come into contact with stormwater prior to the placement of the cap, and that there's the potential for these contaminants to drain onto abutting properties and nearby wetlands. According to the order of conditions, all work that includes pre- and post-construction monitoring, erosion controls, stormwater management, and grading must be completed within 3 years of the permit's issuance. The work associated with the project is subjected to Massachusetts stormwater standards. Haskell said testing will take place 30 years after the project's completion to ensure compliance with bylaws. A 10-day period for appeals to be directed to and heard by the Mass DEP is included in the town's orders. At the meeting, it was established that Belisham will oversee the project pertaining to local bylaws. "We only regulate the wetlands," she said at the meeting, amid a chorus of questions regarding issues that do not fall under the authority of the board. An environmental monitor will be assigned to the product to oversee state and federal requirements. "There are several boxes, several documents, and several boxes they need to check," said Belisham. To Fernandez, the project was shrouded from public view, despite it going before Conservation's commissioners 3 times. "I don't think this was publicized well," he said in an interview after the November 10th meeting. "The whole thing was very quiet." Fall River School Board member resigns as Westport principal, by Matthew Ferreira. Kevin Aguirre is no longer principal of Westport Elementary School, Central Administration at Westport Community Schools has confirmed. Westport Community Schools announces that Kevin Aguirre has resigned from his position as principal of Westport Elementary Schools, effective December 4th, 2025. The district statement reads, noting Aguirre had been working at Westport Community Schools since July 2023. "We thank Mr. Aguirre for his service to Westport Elementary School and wish him well in his future endeavors." The statement came from Westport Community School Superintendent Dr. Fran Roy on Thursday evening in response to inquiries from the Standard Times. Submitted questions about the circumstances of Aguirre's mid-school year resignation were left unanswered. "I resigned my position of Westport Elementary School to pursue other professional opportunities," Aguirre wrote the Standard Times via email Friday morning, December 5th. "I am proud of the work that I performed at the Westport Elementary School and thank the students, parents, and staff for their support." Aguirre is a current Fall River School Committee member and served as 7th Bristol, Massachusetts State Representative from 2011 to 2012. According to past reporting by the Herald News, some of Aguirre's prior employment includes being vice principal at Seekonk High School and a vice principal and school adjustment counselor for Fall River Public Schools. Goats Once Roamed in Unique Tiverton Home featured on Zillow Gone Wild by Margie Cullen. A Tiverton artist's home where goats once roamed the grounds is for sale and was featured in the popular real estate account Zillow Gone Wild. The 7-bedroom home is one of the last farmhouses in the coveted Nanaquacket Road to neighborhood of Tiverton, reads the listing. The unique house has hand-painted murals and art decorating the walls. Here is a fun home that was owned by an artist, Zillow Gone Wild posted. Bonus, goats used to also climb in the yard. Double bonus, 3 kitchens. Triple bonus, 3 clawfoot tubs. The home is currently listed for $1.9 million after a recent price cut of $50,000. And the sellers are offering $40,000 at closing for buyers to use toward the installation of a new septic system. The Zillow Gone Wild featured home is located on 3.8 acres of land at 219 Nanaquacket Road, Tiverton, Rhode Island. The listing says that the home is very private, surrounded by the Nanaquacket Pond to the east and the Saconet River to the west. It has stone wall perimeters, a Gone with the Wind tree-lined driveway, and a view of the Saconet River. The home is 30 minutes from Westport and 10 minutes from Little Compton, according to the listing. The Tiverton farmhouse has 7 bedrooms and 4 full bathrooms, but it also has 2 fireplaces and 2 kitchens. In addition to the main house, which was built in 1890, the property also includes a private cottage with a 3rd kitchen, a full bathroom, a sleeping loft area, and floor-to-ceiling windows. The private cottage has been used as an art studio, a dance studio, and an independent rental. There is also an in-ground pool on the property, as well as a detached garage. The listing notes that use of horses is allowed on the property and that goats have lived there before. Many Instagram users commented on the house's unique interior design, like a mural above a door that included the phrase, "Heavenly Force." What is a heavenly force? Should we be scared? Asked Molly, user at molly.meanders. No one said it was a good artist, said Nick Arnold, user at Coram Publico. A bit too whimsy for me, said David P., user at PYN Tree 65. What drivers need to know about Veterans Memorial Bridge closures by Beth McDermott. The Massachusetts Department of Transportation is scheduled to inspect the Veterans Memorial Bridge eastbound and westbound on Route 6 in Fall River and Somerset this month. The work will take place between 9 a.m. and 3 p.m., December 8th through 12th, and between 9 p.m. and 4 a.m., December 15th through 16th, according to an announcement from the department. The inspection is expected to be completed by the morning of December 17th. December 8th through 10th, pedestrian bike path will be closed during work hours. A right lane closure on Route 6 eastbound and Route 138 southbound is scheduled for December 11th through 12th, but exit ramps will remain open. On December 15th, there will be a right lane closure on the ramp from Route 6 eastbound to Route 79, Route 138 southbound, with the left lane remaining open. On December 16th, the ramp from Route 6 eastbound to Route 79 northbound will be closed. A detour will be in place to divert traffic to Route 79 southbound, where drivers can reverse direction at the first available cross street. Signage and messaging will guide drivers through the work area. Drivers should expect delays, reduce speed, and use caution while traveling through the area. All scheduled work is weather dependent and subject to change without notice. For more information on traffic conditions, visit mass511.com or download the Mass 511 mobile app to view live cameras, travel times, real-time traffic conditions, and project information. You can also subscribe to receive text and email alerts for traffic conditions. Additionally, you can dial 511 and select a route to hear real-time conditions and follow @MassDOT on X, formerly known as Twitter, to receive regular updates on road and traffic conditions. Companies sue to get tariffs refunded. By Rachel Barber. As the Supreme Court weighs a challenge to President Donald Trump's tariffs, American business owners are waiting to see what will happen to the money they spent importing goods and whether they can offer their customers a reprieve from raised prices. Costco recently filed a lawsuit against the Trump administration to secure a complete refund should the Supreme Court strike down tariffs imposed under the 1977 International Emergency Economic Powers Act in a separate case the court heard in November. It's the latest lawsuit from retailers hoping to get their money back from the administration. Court records show others include Bumblebee Foods, EssilorLuxottica, Kawasaki Motors, Revlon, and Yokohama Tire. It remains unclear how U.S. Customs and Border Protection would handle a large-scale refund process, prompting some companies to file lawsuits to preserve their refund rights ahead of the ruling, in case the Supreme Court limits refunds to businesses that have taken legal action. That legal action comes at a cost. Beyond legal fees, suing a presidential administration has the potential to upset customers and taint a relationship with the federal government, according to Drew DeLong, head of corporate statecraft at Kearney Foresight. There's so much uncertainty right now that the calculation becomes, is filing a suit worth the incremental certainty that if this action is taken, we are in a better position, DeLong said. It's not a battle every company can take on. If you are a business that does not have the infrastructure in place to navigate this environment proactively in terms of government engagement, you're at less of a competitive advantage than those that do, DeLong said. Just as there are discussions of a K-shaped economy right now in terms of the strength of the consumer on the upside and downside, I think you're seeing a very similar trend emerge with those who have the infrastructure to navigate this environment. Mechlon Khosrovian, a spirits maker and co-founder of Green Bar Distillery in Los Angeles, said at the beginning of 2025 his company was paying 25% tariffs. At one point during the year, they jumped to 170% and are now back down to 55%. Which is, a lot better than 170, but it's still quite a lot of money for us, Khosrovian said. He said his team is still adding up the total amount tariffs will cost the company for the year, but he estimated they will pay between $75,000 and $125,000, up from the $25,000 to $50,000 he said they were paying before. Khosrovian said that the distillery sources every fresh ingredient it can from nearby farms, but there are some it can't realistically get from producers in the United States, including juniper berries, cinnamon, clove, nutmeg, and coffee. He said they're preparing to lay off both full-time and part-time workers as a cost-saving measure, in part because he doesn't believe consumers can absorb any price increases in the current economic climate. The possibility of layoffs is an open conversation among his 15-person staff. Our staff initially thought it's the governments where we import products from that pay the tariffs. We had to say, no, Here's the bill, Kurosovian said. Our entire team went through a number of exercises to find any cost savings anywhere. Ultimately, we couldn't find enough. Thomson Traders Incorporated President Clifford Thompson said tariffs have led the Greensboro, North Carolina family business, which sells sinks, tubs, and custom range hoods, to accrue debt and raise prices. In Thompson's case, he said the challenge isn't sourcing materials, it's sourcing the craftsmanship. He said the company's handcrafted products can't be made in the United States and still sold at a reasonable price. He said his company doesn't have the financial capacity to train employees to do the same work, and even if it did, he estimated the process would take about 3 years. In previous years, he said the amount the company paid in tariffs wasn't something we paid a lot of attention to. Now, he said, the company is on track to pay more than $1 million in 2025. We went from a year that was probably going to be profitable to a year where we're going to break even at best, Thompson said. I wouldn't say it's fully sustainable. We'll figure it out. Thankfully, we've been in business for a while. I think it's pretty detrimental to younger companies. Kurosovian and Thompson's companies are two of hundreds that have joined We Pay the Tariffs, a coalition backed by the Trade Partnership and other pro-trade groups. The coalition filed an amicus brief with the Supreme Court asking the justices to uphold lower court rulings and deem the tariffs unlawful. Kurosovian said he hopes the litigation ends with the Supreme Court striking down the tariffs. In his fantasy scenario, his company gets a refund. If it does, he said he'd love to bring back some of the workers the company plans to lay off, but that his company would spend it very cautiously because we don't know what's going to come around the corner. Thompson said if his company was given a refund, it would use it to pay down the debt it incurred to pay the tariffs, but that it, too, would likely bank it for a little while just to see where things went. Their caution isn't unreasonable, according to DeLong, who said people should not assume a Supreme Court ruling will mark the end of tariffs. The Trump administration has several options to implement similar tariffs in other ways. I don't think that there is any voice in this administration I am aware of that will say tariffs are not here to stay, DeLong said. They've been crystal clear that this is a cornerstone, and I don't suspect that them losing IEEPA is going to deter the intent of what they developed. CEO touts benefits of TN tunnel plan by Hadley Hitson and Stuart Dias. Boring Company CEO Steve Davis said Elon Musk's proposed Nashville underground traffic tunnels could benefit the region's environment by improving transportation efficiency and reducing greenhouse gas emissions. The tunnel boring company plans to release an environmental impact study and its third-party review to the public by December 15th. Even with those findings, doubts will likely endure about whether tunneling through erosion-prone limestone formations and near Mill Creek, a tributary of the Cumberland River, could affect water quality, among other environmental concerns. The Boring Company projects in Las Vegas have faced hundreds of environmental citations, thousands of dollars in fines, and have been the target of multiple Occupational Safety and Health Administration investigations. The unusual private transportation project's challenges raise questions about whether Nashville could face comparable issues as the company pursues its goal of linking downtown with the airport. Davis maintains the net effect will be positive, citing improved transportation, reduced emissions, and economic growth. There's really no better way to build here, Davis said during a November 24th live stream on X. But whether those benefits outweigh the risks remains an open question for regulators and many residents. The company's environmental report will include details on noise and vibration, air quality, greenhouse gas emissions, hazardous and regulated materials, land use and zoning, aquatic resources, and rare and protected species. The net effect is a positive impact in transportation and air quality, greenhouse gas reduction, economic growth, etc., Davis said. From an environmental standpoint, there is no better method of construction that I am aware of than using tunnel boring machines. Mill Creek, the only remaining home of the endangered Nashville crayfish, stands between the boring company's Music City Loop launch site and Nashville International Airport. Tunneling too close to the river could result in construction materials leaking into the water, said Davie Resource Group principal geologist David Jackson. The boring company said it had obtained 27 of the necessary 45 permits for the project as of December 1st, but those don't include the Tennessee Department of Transportation. The Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation said it had not received any permit applications from the boring company as of December 3rd. Amid the Vegas Loop tunnel expansion, Nevada state regulators have accused the company of more than 800 environmental infractions in the last 2 years, according to ProPublica. These include untreated wastewater dumped in city sewage systems, digging without permits, and missing environmental inspections. The Nevada Division of Environmental Protections could have reportedly fined the company more than $3 million, but discounted the penalty down to $242,800 for permitting and water pollution violations. Additionally, in November, the company reportedly received a $500,000 fine from the Clark County Water Reclamation District for dumping drilling fluids into manholes. Boring company officials have reportedly contested the violations, but have not issued a public statement. Despite the previous violations, the company's Las Vegas expansion continues, and Davis said that the Music City Loop will not impact the local water table. Las Vegas Convention Center CEO Steve Hill, who is largely responsible for the development of the Vegas Loop, said in an October interview with the Tennessean that concern over safety issues is more warranted than environmental criticism. Hill said the 800 environmental violations that the state assessed the boring company in September were overkill and the result of an administrative error. There are things that I would criticize more than that, Hill said. The safety incidents that we had talked about a year and a half ago, those were real, and those need to be corrected. We made that pretty clear to the boring company. Workers inside the tunnels allegedly suffered chemical burns, and a Nevada Occupational Safety and Health Administration report stated that the accelerants used in the tunnel's concrete mix were inadvertently sprayed onto at least 10 employees. Another employee was also involved in a crushing incident in September amid the Vegas Loop's expansion construction. Hill said the incident was the result of a mistake that employee made, and it was fortunate that it wasn't worse than it was. They have needed to mature as a company. On the construction side, there's a real difference in their operating ability, which they do exceptionally well, and their construction company, which continues to need to improve. Those types of events need to go away. A central concern from Nashville residents and business leaders is safety inside the 12-foot wide tunnel system, from emergency responder accessibility to the possibility of flooding. After all, a large portion of the planned tunnels lie in areas that were significantly impacted by the catastrophic 2010 Nashville flood. Davis said the boring company has dealt with several floods in Las Vegas, and they have never impacted the Vegas Loop. Tunnels are as weatherproof as you can get for a public transportation system, Davis said. Still, some water leaks into the tunnel in Las Vegas, and Davis said it will likely be the same in Nashville. But he said those leaks do not pose a safety risk. The nice thing is, water isn't a safety hazard, Davis said. In the worst case, if it was like a big leak, which is pretty rare, they are usually like tiny drips. It's like rain to a Tesla. You know the windshield wiper will turn on and wipe the drops away. As concerns loom over the potential for a battery fire inside the tunnel, Davis said the company takes a multi-layered approach with an autonomous fire detection system, driver awareness, and a 24-hour manned operational control center. We have 100% coverage so you can see 100% of the smoke, he said. Emergency passages will be built into the Music City Loop, and the Boring Company will have its own emergency response vehicles that firefighters can take into the tunnels if need be, Davis said. We've reached the halfway point of our program, and regular listeners are aware that at this stage of our broadcast, we move to the obituaries. Gail Gendron Lopes, 70, passed away Thursday, December 4th, 2025, at her residence, surrounded by her loving family. She was the wife of Mark Lopes, with whom she shared 48 years of marriage. Born in Providence, she was the daughter of Martha Sanford Gendron and the late Norman Gendron. In addition to her husband and mother, she is survived by her daughter, Janet Lopes, and her husband, David Shields of Wrentham, her son, Gregory Lopes, and his wife, Lauren of Swansea. Private arrangements are in the care of Waring Sullivan Home at Swansea. Memorial contributions in her honor may be made to the American Cancer Society, P.O. Box 6704, Hagerstown, Maryland, 21741, or donate.cancer.org/?campaign equals default &LANG equals EN. For condolences, please visit www.waring-sullivan.com. Report alleges alligator Alcatraz torture by Anna Gagne-Lassagne. A global human rights organization is alleging inhumane treatment of detainees at Alligator Alcatraz at the Dade Collier Training and Transition Airport in Okapee, Florida, claiming some are subject to what it says is torture. A report by Amnesty International claims detainees are being mistreated at the state-run Immigration Detention Center in the Everglades and the Chrome North Service Processing Center, a federally run immigration detention and processing center in Miami. According to the report, punitive punishment at Alligator Alcatraz includes being put in the box, described as a 2-by-2-foot cage-like structure people are put in as punishment, sometimes for hours at a time exposed to the elements with hardly any water, with their feet attached to restraints on the ground. People ended up in the box just for asking the guards for anything. I saw a guy who was put in it for an entire day, said one man who was interviewed in the report. The report says immigrants detained at Alligator Alcatraz are also experiencing unsanitary conditions, including overflowing toilets with fecal matter seeping into where people are sleeping, limited access to showers, exposure to insects without protective measures, lights on 24 hours a day, poor quality food and water, and lack of privacy, including cameras above the toilets. Immigration enforcement cannot operate outside the rule of law or exempt itself from human rights standards. What we are seeing in Florida should alarm the entire region, Anna Picker, Amnesty International's regional director for the Americas, said in a news release. According to the organization's report, ICE officials stated that they wholly disagree with Amnesty International's findings, but did not provide additional information. Molly Best, a spokesperson from Florida Governor Ron DeSantis' office, called the report a politically motivated hack and said allegations of abuse or negligence have been fully investigated and are fabrications. In fact, running these allegations without any evidence whatsoever could jeopardize the safety and security of our staff and those being housed at Alligator Alcatraz, Best said in a text message to the USA Today Network, Florida. Amnesty International said its findings were gathered between September 21st and 26th of this year. While the organization was able to access Chrome, they were not able to enter Alligator Alcatraz and said they received no response from Florida authorities. The information about Alligator Alcatraz in the report was then gathered by interviewing 4 detainees at Chrome who had previously been at the state-run detention facility. The report also alleges medical treatment is inconsistent or non-existent at Alligator Alcatraz, and detainees are housed in cages with very little outside time. While phones are available in each cage, they only allow monitored, collect-pay phone calls, and those are limited to 5 minutes. Included in Amnesty International's list of recommendations are the shutdown of Alligator Alcatraz, an end to 287G agreements between local law enforcement and federal immigration authorities, prohibiting the use of solitary confinement in Chrome, and ensuring all detainees have access to legal counsel. The cumulative effect of these punitive policies and practices reveals a deliberate strategy that dehumanizes and punishes migrants and people seeking safety, with the aim of deterring them from seeking protection or staying in the country, the report said. These policies erode due process guarantees and violate the United States' obligations under international human rights and refugee law. As previously reported, Alligator Alcatraz is one of 2 state-run immigration detention facilities in Florida, the other being Baker Correctional Institution in Sanderson. Alligator Alcatraz, which opened in early July, has been the subject of several lawsuits which have attempted to shut down the detention center. The state and the federal government are defendants in a lawsuit from the Friends of the Everglades, the Center for Biological Diversity, and the Miccosukee Tribe of Indians of Florida on grounds that the state failed to conduct an environmental review on the land where Alligator Alcatraz is located. Environmental study is required to comply with federal law, and critics say that federal funds cement the U.S. government's involvement in the facility. While the facility's operations were briefly put on pause in August, and a federal appeals court decision allowed it to resume operations in September. In October, the feds said they reimbursed the state of Florida over $500 million for its state-run immigration facilities, a move that plaintiffs called a smoking gun. That lawsuit is still pending. In a statement provided to the USA Today Network, Florida Miccosukee Chairman Talbert Cypress said the tribe is focused on protecting its ancestral lands and holding the state and federal government accountable for their failure to comply with environmental laws in the facility's original and illegal construction. By protecting nature, we protect humanity. We hope to soon end this dark chapter of history in the Big Cypress. Firm. More Kids Are Investing in Markets by Medora Lee. It's been a rough ride for many parents in 2025 with job losses mounting and inflation that just won't go away. But amid all that, children have been the bright spot, according to Greenlight's Family Money app. In 2025, children up to age 17 using Greenlight invested more than $70 million, up 65% from 2024, the company said. They also doubled their recurring automated investments and increased their average buy trade to $49.56 from $39.70 in 2024. Whether from paychecks or allowance, young people are saving more and investing at younger ages, Greenlight said. The average age among Greenlight's young investors is 12. When I was 15, I started learning how to invest, and I became a better and better investor over time, said Tim Sheehan, Greenlight's co-founder and chief executive. Learning to be a smart investor, like Warren Buffett and Peter Lynch, is how to build true wealth. We want to enable everyone to become a smart investor and build wealth. As expected, young investors pour money into what they know and love best: technology. Top individual stock holdings include artificial intelligence chip leader NVIDIA, iPhone maker Apple, e-commerce mammoth Amazon, and electric vehicle maker Tesla, Greenlight data shows. They also heavily invested in Vanguard S&P 500 ETF, which has about 40% weight for tech stocks. Bitcoin also received teenage love this year. A Bitcoin ETF jumped to number 12 on the list of top holdings from number 21 in 2024, Greenlight said. According to Greenlight's annual Family Trends report, these are the top 10 reasons young people saved in 2025. 1. Car. 2. College. 3. Computers. 4. Savings. 5. Bike. 6. Holidays. 7. Apparel. 8. Phone. 9. Emergency. 10. Console gaming. Teens continue to spend money, but their spending has become more intentional in line with broader trends among adults, Greenlight said. That means thrifting, retro scores, and thoughtful bargain hunting took over. Young consumers doubled their spending from 2024 on online buy and sell platform Depop to $7.2 million, and up their spending at discount retailer Five Below by 196% to $7.8 million, Greenlight data shows. There is one perk they'll continue to pay for, though: concerts. Young people spent more than $3.6 million to see their favorite singers perform live. Greenlight predicts young people will continue building on these trends in 2026, especially since half of them said in the survey they want money to buy a home or a business by the age of 25, and 67% think they'll be as financially well off or better off than their parents. As we look ahead to 2026, we anticipate more robust conversations around money, including how to manage, grow, and protect it, said Jennifer Seitz, Director of Education at Greenlight. Young people love seeing their money grow, and parents love this because it channels their ambition into long-term, healthy financial habits. Student magazines closed in fight over press freedom, by Brianna J. Frank and Sarah Clifton. In the latest fight over student press freedom, the University of Alabama has decided to suspend all activities at 2 of its student-led magazines. The school made the decision to comply with our legal obligations, said university spokesperson Alex House. That was a reference to U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi's July memo outlining how entities that receive federal funding, which include public universities, can avoid violating federal anti-discrimination laws as interpreted by the Trump administration, which maintains that diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives amount to illegal discrimination. The student magazines were Alice Magazine, which focuses on health, wellness, fashion, and women's issues, and 1956, which centers on Black culture and life on the university's campus. Bondi's memo says that one of our nation's bedrock principles is that all Americans must be treated equal, and that discrimination based on protected characteristics is illegal. The memo also discourages unlawful proxies, which it defines as entities that intentionally use ostensibly neutral criteria that function as substitutes for explicit consideration of race, sex, or other protected characteristics. The students leading the magazines have rejected the notions that their organizations violated such policies. Gabrielle Gunter, editor-in-chief of Alice Magazine, said she believed, "Us having a specific target audience was the problem," though she emphasized that students of all backgrounds were allowed to apply to and write for both magazines. "I was kind of confused because I was under the impression that we were protected under the First Amendment's freedom of press protections, but apparently it's not applicable in this situation," Gunter said. The Student Press Law Center told USA Today the First Amendment does extend to student media and questioned how the university arrived at the conclusion that the magazines violated federal policy. "These magazines do not exclude anyone. They amplify the voices of communities that have historically been marginalized," said SPLC Senior Legal Counsel Mike Highstand. "That is protected expression, not unlawful discrimination." He further suggested the school's move could constitute illegal viewpoint discrimination, given that it suspended only the magazines that primarily serve women and Black students while leaving other publications alone. Indiana University recently drew national controversy for its decision to fire the advisor of its student newspaper and order the Indiana Daily Student to end all print publication amid disputes with school leadership over the newspaper's content. The advisor, who also was the director of student media, has sued the university, accusing it of First Amendment violations. The University of Central Oklahoma announced in August that it would stop print publication of its student newspaper. "This has been an exceptionally tough year for universities and for student media," Highstand said. U.S. Eyes 2027 for Europe-Led NATO Defense by Graham Slattery and Humaira Pamuk. The United States wants Europe to take over the majority of NATO's conventional defense capabilities, from intelligence to missiles, by 2027, Pentagon officials told diplomats in Washington last week, a tight deadline that struck some European officials as unrealistic. The message, recounted by 5 sources familiar with the discussion, including a U.S. official, was conveyed at a meeting in Washington last week of Pentagon staff overseeing NATO policy and several European delegations. The shifting of this burden from the United States to European members of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization would dramatically change how the United States, a founding member of the post-war alliance, works with its most important military partners. In the meeting, Pentagon officials indicated that Washington was not yet satisfied with the strides Europe has made to boost its defense capabilities since Russia's expanded invasion of Ukraine in 2022. The U.S. officials told their counterparts that if Europe does not meet the 2027 deadline, the United States may stop participating in some NATO defense or coordination mechanisms, said the sources, who requested anonymity to discuss private conversations. Some officials on Capitol Hill are aware of and concerned about the Pentagon's message to the Europeans, one U.S. official said. Conventional defense capabilities include non-nuclear assets from troops to weapons, and the officials did not explain how the United States would measure Europe's progress toward shouldering most of the burden. It was also not clear if the 2027 deadline represented the Trump administration position or only the views of some Pentagon officials. There are significant disagreements in Washington over the military role the United States should play in Europe. Several European officials said that a 2027 deadline was not realistic no matter how Washington measures progress, since Europe needs more than money and political will to replace certain U.S. capabilities in the short term. Among other challenges, NATO allies face production backlogs for military equipment they are trying to purchase. While U.S. officials have encouraged Europe to buy more U.S.-made material, some of the most prized U.S.-made weapons and defense systems would take years to be delivered if ordered today. The United States also contributes capabilities that cannot simply be purchased, such as unique intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance that have proven key to the Ukrainian war effort. Asked for comment, a NATO official speaking for the alliance said European allies had begun taking more responsibility for the continent's security, but did not comment on the 2027 deadline. Allies have recognized the need to invest more in defense and shift the burden on conventional defense from the United States to Europe, the official said. The White House did not immediately respond to requests for comment. We've been very clear in the need for Europeans to lead in the conventional defense of Europe, said Pentagon Press Secretary Kingsley Wilson. We are committed to working through NATO coordination mechanisms to strengthen the alliance and ensure its long-term viability as European allies increasingly take on responsibility for conventional deterrence and defense in Europe. European nations have broadly accepted President Donald Trump's demand they take more responsibility for their own security and have pledged big increases in defense spending. The European Union has set a target of making the continent ready to defend itself by 2030 and says it must fill gaps in its air defenses, drones, cyber warfare capabilities, munitions, and other areas. Officials and analysts said even that deadline is highly ambitious. The Trump administration has consistently argued that European allies need to contribute more to the NATO alliance, but it's not always clear where the president stands on NATO. On the campaign trail in 2024, Trump frequently bashed European allies, and he said he would encourage Russian President Vladimir Putin to invade NATO countries that did not spend their fair share on defense. But at the annual NATO Leaders Summit in June, Trump effusively praised European leaders for agreeing to a U.S. plan to boost the annual defense spending target for member states to 5% of gross domestic product. In the months since, Trump has vacillated between a harder line on Russia, the bloc's main opponent, and more recently, a willingness to negotiate with Moscow over the Ukraine conflict. European officials have complained that they were largely cut out of those negotiations. At a meeting of NATO foreign ministers last week, U.S. Deputy Secretary of State Christopher Landau said it was obvious NATO allies should take responsibility for Europe's defense. Successive U.S. administrations have been saying this in one form or another pretty much my whole life. But our administration means what it says, Landau wrote on X. Herbert Chargers plotting to extend Eagles slump. Justin Herbert has a fractured hand, but his chances of playing tonight are far from broken. Herbert is projected to have a strong chance of being in the lineup despite the break in his left, non-throwing hand when his Los Angeles Chargers opposed the Philadelphia Eagles at SoFi Stadium in Inglewood, California. The 27-year-old quarterback sustained the fracture during the first quarter of the Chargers' 31-14 home victory against the Las Vegas Raiders last week. He left the contest and later returned with a cast to protect the hand. Herbert underwent surgery Monday afternoon, and a plate and multiple screws were inserted into the hand. He was a limited practice participant on Thursday. "I'm doing everything I can to be out there," Herbert said. "I'd fight through anything for those guys. But at the end of the day, you've got to be realistic and listen to the doctors, because they know best. We'll see how it goes." Herbert has passed for 2,842 yards and 21 touchdowns against 10 interceptions, so the Chargers, 8-4, certainly want him on the field for the primetime matchup with the Eagles, 8-4. In fact, Los Angeles offensive coordinator Greg Roman is counting on it. "For this game in particular, we're really optimistic Justin is going to play," Roman said Thursday. Trey Lance would be the starting quarterback against the Eagles if Herbert can't play. One player to lean on will be rookie running back Omarion Hampton, who is expected back after missing the past 7 games with a left ankle fracture. Los Angeles began the weekend sitting in the top wildcard spot in a crowded AFC playoff race, 2 games behind the first-place Denver Broncos in the AFC West. Philadelphia leads the NFC East, but has dropped back-to-back games to lose ground in the hunt for the conference's top seed. The Eagles have been outscored 24-6 in the fourth quarter the past 2 weeks, while losing to the Dallas Cowboys, 24-21, and the Chicago Bears, 24-15. For the season, Philadelphia has been outscored 84-56 in the final quarter. Eagles coach Nick Sirianni said he is examining why the team fell into a mini slump. "Some of these answers, when you are trying to fix things, it is hard, they aren't clear," Sirianni said. "I never feel like when we've had a lead we've been conservative. Obviously we're on a 2-game losing streak right now. It's just about getting back to that confidence and that consistency." Sirianni said this week that associate head coach Kevin Patullo would remain the offensive play caller. Patullo's New Jersey home was pelted with eggs early Saturday morning, hours after the Eagles lost to the Bears. Star quarterback Jalen Hurts isn't about to panic over 2 straight losses. He sees no reason why Philadelphia can't repeat as Super Bowl champion. "We've got a lot of opportunity in front of us," Hurts said Thursday. "It takes a tight-knit group, it takes a collective, and these are things we can control. You never run from accountability. There are a lot of things we can improve on and have done well in the past. We just need to be more consistent and get everybody on the same page." The Eagles will be without star defensive tackle Jalen Carter, who underwent procedures on both shoulders earlier this week. Philadelphia offensive tackle Lane Johnson, foot, missed practice on Thursday. Linebacker Zach Braun, hand, and Jalen Phillips, concussion, and receivers Jahan Dotson, toe, and Xavier Gibson, shoulder, were limited. Defensive lineman Deshaun Hand, illness, and tight end Tucker Fisk, ankle, were the only Chargers to miss practice due to injury or illness on Thursday. In addition to Herbert, 4 others were limited. Hassan Haskins, hamstring, receiver Quentin Johnson, shoulder, and defensive lineman Trey Pipkins, back, and Jamari Saylor, shoulder. Hampton was officially listed as questionable for the Chargers after being limited in practice on Thursday and limited as a full participant on Friday and Saturday. That's all I have time for. This is your reader, Robert Orm, saying thanks for listening.